Hey, so we're back, and we're going to talk about the fancy whiskey cocktail, also sometimes called the improved whiskey cocktail. So, the improved whiskey cocktail, or fancy whiskey cocktail, was the evolution as the whiskey cocktail transitioned and then eventually became known as the old fashioned, in the wake of the Manhattan being the most popular way to drink whiskey in the latter half of the 1800s. So, what is a fancy whiskey cocktail? Well, it's a whiskey cocktail that has been made fancy. What makes a fancy whiskey cocktail fancy? Well, the addition of some different liqueurs. So instead of just making your regular whiskey cocktail with bitters, sugar, whiskey, and water, or ice, instead you would add in one or two different liqueurs and one or two different kinds of bitters. So one example of a really excellent and possibly the most popular, and it certainly is the most popular, improved whiskey cocktail or fancy whiskey cocktail variant is the Sazerac. Sazerac itself reads just like an old-fashioned. You're going to use whiskey, in this case rye whiskey. And then you have Peychaud and Angostura bitters, so two different kinds of bitters, simple syrup, and then you put it in a glass that's been rinsed with absinthe, so the addition of a different liqueur. So because there's two different kinds of bitters, the addition of another liqueur, you've got yourself a fancy whiskey cocktail. You can make all different kinds of fancy whiskey cocktails depending on what kind of liqueurs you prefer to use. You can make a tiki variant using a passion fruit liqueur if you wanted. Today we're going to do a pretty bedrock, solid, improved whiskey cocktail that you'd see throughout most of the country, throughout most of the 1800s. So the ones that were most popular would use rye whiskey or bourbon, and then they would include maraschino liqueur as well as dry curacao. So maraschino is commonly said as maraschino, but the Italian pronunciation is maraschino. Now, it's commonly seen as Italian liqueur, but it was actually originally created right across the Tyrrhenian Sea over there in the Baltic region, Balkan region. It is what is today the Czech Republic, is the originators of maraschino liqueur. It's really, really popular. It's made from cherries, and it's usually made from the bark or roots of the cherry tree, as opposed to the fruit flesh of the cherries. So it's more of a bitter cherry expression in most expressions. The maraschino that I have today was the only one that we could find. Now, I've never used this product, Bordiga. It says it's from Italy. It smells rather more like an amaretto. It has more of an almondy note to it. There's actually a huge amount of variety amongst maraschino liqueurs. So make sure you smell them or try them, or, experiment and see which one you like the best. Luxardo is the one that is most popular and most common. It's got like a wicker basket around it. Absolutely phenomenal. That one's actually a little bit more on the bitter side, even though it smells rather sweet. Now for Curacao, this comes from the Isle of Curacao in the Caribbean. When the French colonized the Caribbean, they found the Isle of Curacao, and at the time they described it as a deserted island or a desert island. They tried to grow orange trees there, but the oranges fruit was so bitter that goats wouldn't even eat it, so they didn't know what to do with it, so they decided to make a liqueur out of it. They would peel the oranges and then steep them in Jamaican rum, and that kind of came to invent this category of liqueur. Today we're using the genuine Curacao liqueur by Senor and Company, and it is bottled and produced on the Isle of Curacao. So I've never used this product before. It smells rather on the floral and sweeter side. The one that I much prefer is Pierre Ferrand's Dry Curacao, and that was made in part with David Wondrich and some cognac producers to more accurately replicate the style of Dry Curacao that they would have way back in the 1800s. But you know what? When you're making cocktails, sometimes you don't get to choose what you got. You got to work with what you got, and that's what we're going to do today. I'm sure it's going to be a fine drink. At any rate, let's make a little fancy whiskey cocktail. So we're going to start the same way that we started with an old-fashioned. We're going to have ourselves a little bit of lump sugar here. Come on, buddy. There we go. All right, so we got our lump sugar. Bingo, bango. I'm going to use two different kinds of bitters today. We're going to use the old Watkins aromatic vanilla. A couple dashes in there. And then this one's actually a non-alcoholic bitters. If you're making mocktails, I can't more strongly recommend Fee Brothers bitters coming out of Rochester. These guys have been in business since 1864. Really excellent. This one's their whiskey barrel aged bitters. Boom, boom, boom. And just like before, we're going to muddle up that sugar cube. I went a little heavy on the bitters, so it did most of the work. Why did I go a little heavy on the bitters? Because these liqueurs are a little bit on the sweeter side. You want to make sure you modulate your cocktail to the preference of your palate or the person to whom you're serving it. So make sure that the drink is right for them. If you're using things that are a little bit sweeter than you used to, maybe balance out the cocktail on the other end, or vice versa. All right. Now we got ourselves our delicious Old Crow. 2 ounces are going to go in here again. Brilliant. Now, before I start stirring this up, we basically got ourselves an old-fashioned with a different kind of bitters right now. So here's the thing that makes it a fancy whiskey cocktail. We take our bar spoon. Most bar spoons are a half a teaspoon in their measurement. And we're just going to add a bar spoon of our 2 different liqueurs. There's the maraschino. And there's our curacao. Now I'm just going to ice this bad boy up and give it a stir. Most of that sugar looks like it's already dissolved, which is excellent. Some folks will stir the cocktail and they'll hold it with one finger on top, one in the middle, and one on the bottom. It depends on how you like to do it. Or whatever makes you feel comfortable. If you're more of the culinary bent, they taught us when making whipped cream, stir down here and use the sexy shoulder technique. It gets old pretty fast though. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Now we're going to strain this out onto a big rock into our glass. There we go. And now I'm going to garnish this with a little orange zest, just like before. Now, if you're making this cocktail with rye whiskey, or even if you're making an old-fashioned with rye, I'd strongly recommend you try doing a little bit of lemon zest on top. I think it blends a little bit better with rye whiskey, but try both. Orange and lemon make whiskey cocktails really sing. Now, if you want to hold on to the peel more easily, peel it in between your ring finger and your pinky. See how the peel is extending in between like a bit like a ticker tape. All right, and there we go. Now we got our peel, and maybe I didn't show this very well, but this side, that's the side that was on the inside of the fruit. That white there's the pith. Outside, that's the orange peel. So you want the inside of the peel to face the inside of the spoon. That way you make sure that it's not facing inside out when you end up garnishing it. All right, we got that going right there. A little English, bingo. And you can roll it around a little bit to loosen the coil so that you can more easily get it off. Then you want to use your pinky here to just slide it off. And there we go. Nice and intact. Oh, there we go. Bingo. Once again, I'm going to show you a little bit on how to flame an orange peel. There's my knife. Okay, so we got our orange peel. I'm going to hold it from the long ends of the oval. Just going to warm this guy up a little bit. And then if you really want to elevate it for the guests, you can rub the peel, now that it's all toasty and roasty, around the inside of the glass. Now they're going to smell that aromatized orange peel when they go to sip it. So there you are. You have yourself a fancy whiskey cocktail, or an improved whiskey cocktail. As you can see, it's pretty much just an old-fashioned that's been zhuzhed up with a little bit more liqueur. Oh yeah, it's definitely got a lot more depth and a little bit more of a longer finish to it. And the whiskey actually comes out in the front, and then it comes back out at the end after a little bit of a detour through some cherry, almondy, orangey kind of territory. Let me have Sherry take a taste and see if she thinks the same.
I can see the improvement. They're both really good, but this one I can definitely taste a little evolved.
So if you very much enjoy an old-fashioned, try making an improved whiskey cocktail or a fancy whiskey cocktail. Or just use some of the tips and tricks that you just saw to elevate your next cocktail, whether it be one of these or perhaps another one. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Oh, also, make sure if you like the products that I used, or you want to find them in order to use them in your own kitchen or bar, that you scope out the links below. But see us next time. We're going to make a Manhattan coming up right next.